My wedding day, the music was playing. The scent of 500 white peonies was so thick it was suffocating. Every detail was perfect, except one. The space next to me where my fiancé should have been was a void. His last text was burning a hole in the silk of my dress. "I'm sorry, Sara, Mina needs me. Her scan results are in, I have to be with her." On the most important day of my life, he chose his ex-girlfriend, so I did the only thing that made sense. I walked down the aisle. And I proposed to the man he hates more than anyone in this world. Flashback 2 hours before the ceremony. The bridal suite was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. My mother, her eyes glistening, fussed with the final stitches on my Vera Wang gown. My 3 bridesmaids, my cousins, were fluttering around, adjusting their lavender dresses, their laughter like wind chimes. I stood in the center, a mannequin of bliss, allowing them to preen and primp me. Park Sora, the successful event planner, was about to have her masterpiece event, her own wedding. Minho and I had been together for 3 years. He was kind, comfortable, safe. A partner at his family's respectable mid-tier conglomerate. He loved me in a gentle, predictable way. The only shadow in our relationship was the ghost of Mina, his first love. She had left for an art curator job in New York 2 years before we met, breaking his heart. She returned to Seoul 6 months ago, suddenly frail and mysterious, speaking of unexplained illnesses and needing her old friend. I'd been understanding, too understanding. I'd encouraged him to be there for her. I never imagined he would choose her over me on our wedding day. The text came at 1:17 p.m. The ceremony was at 2:00. The phone vibrated on the vanity, cutting through the giggles. I saw Minyo's name and smiled, expecting a giddy "can't wait to see you" message. "I'm sorry, Sora, Mina needs me. Her scan results are in, I have to be with her." The words didn't make sense. I read them again. And a third time. The room's noise faded into a dull hum. Her scan results. Not his mother, not his father, hers. "Unnai, are you okay?" my youngest cousin asked, her smile fading. I couldn't speak. I just handed her the phone. The gasp that rippled through the room was a prelude to the tsunami of humiliation that was coming. My mother snatched the phone, her face draining of color. "Yeah, Park Sora, what is this? A joke?" "It's not a joke, Uma," I whispered, my voice hollow. My father, alerted by the sudden silence, knocked and entered. He took one look at our faces and knew. He called Minyo's phone. It went straight to voicemail. He called Minyo's father. The conversation was short, brutal. His face turned to granite. "He's not here," Appa confirmed, his voice trembling with a fury I'd never heard. "He left 20 minutes ago. He went to the hospital, that fool." The reality crashed down. 500 guests. The cream of Seoul's society. Our family's business partners. The press. They were all out there, sipping champagne, waiting for a show. And I was the star of a tragedy about to become a national joke. The humiliation was a physical acid, eating me from the inside. I saw the pity in my cousin's eyes, the rage in my father's, the devastation in my mother's. I was no longer Park Sora, the capable, brilliant woman. I was the woman who was not enough, the woman who was so easily discarded. I stumbled to the window, pulling back the heavy velvet curtain. Below, in the garden of the Shilla Hotel, I could see the guests mingling. And then I saw him. Kim Joon-Ho. He stood apart from the crowd, a statue of impenetrable calm. Dressed in a razor-sharp black suit that cost more than most of the cars in the valet, he held a glass of champagne but never drank. He was the CEO of SJ Group, a tech titan whose meteoric rise had been built on the bones of companies like Minyo's families. Minho despised him, called him a ruthless shark. I'd only invited him as a professional courtesy, a power move. Minho had been livid. And in that moment, staring at Joon-Ho's solitary, powerful figure, the broken pieces of my mind rearranged themselves into a new, terrifying, and brilliant shape. Revenge. Not a screaming, crying fit, not a pathetic retreat. A revenge so cold, so public, so devastating it would eclipse the humiliation. It would become a legend. "Uma, Appa, everyone. Out," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. "Soria," my mother began. "Out!" The word was a whip crack. They fled, leaving me alone in the ruins of my wedding day. I picked up my phone. My hands, which had been trembling minutes before, were now steady as a surgeon's. I found the number I'd secured for his RSVP. Kim Joon-Ho SSI. This is Park Sora, the bride. I need to speak with you. In the antechamber, right now. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out of the bridal suite, my wedding dress trailing behind me like a banner of war. I didn't look at anyone. I moved through the hallway, a woman possessed, and entered the small, quiet antechamber next to the main hall. He was there a moment later, filling the doorway. He was even more imposing up close. His eyes, dark and intelligent, scanned me in one swift, assessing glance, taking in the tear-streaked makeup, the heaving chest, the wild, furious fire in my eyes. "Park Sora SSI," he said, his voice a low, calm rumble that seemed to absorb the chaos around us. "This is unconventional." 5 billion won, I said, my voice clear and cutting, devoid of any emotion. He didn't even blink. "I'm sorry." 5 billion, transferred to my account today, to walk down that aisle with me right now, to stand where he was supposed to stand. I laid out the terms with the precision of a corporate merger. A 1-year contract marriage, public appearances as the perfect couple. You get a respectable, intelligent wife from a good family, which will instantly quell the rumors about your ruthless bachelor persona and secure the deal with the traditional Chinese investors you've been courting. I get my dignity back, and I get to watch my ex-fiancé's family business crumble when they realize their biggest rival is now their son's jilted bride's husband. I was gambling with my entire life on his appreciation for a bold business strategy. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze piercing. I held it, unflinching. I saw the calculations whirring behind his eyes, the sheer, audacious brilliance of the move, the business advantage, the chance to utterly humiliate a rival family in the most poetic way imaginable. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just been offered a prime cut of meat. "The deal is 10 billion, he countered, his voice dropping. "And you play the part perfectly. No lingering affections for the fool. We are a united front." "Deal," I said without hesitation. He offered me his arm. "Then shall we give them a show they'll never forget." The doors to the main hall were closed. The music swelled. The processional began. The wedding coordinator, pale and confused, looked at me, then at Joon-Ho, her headset crackling with panic. "Open the doors," Joon-Ho commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. The massive oak doors swung open. 500 faces turned. The music faltered. The gasp that rippled through the room was a physical wave. I saw Minho's parents in the front row, their faces frozen in horror. I saw my own parents, their shock morphing into a dawning, terrified understanding. And I walked. I held onto Joon-Ho's arm, my head held high, a small, cold smile on my lips. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect. This wasn't a wedding march. It was a declaration of war. The silence in Kim Joon-Ho's penthouse was louder than any wedding march. I was now Mrs. Kim Sora. The name felt like a costume. The press had erupted. "SCORNED bride's shocking revenge. Wedding day power play ROCKS business world." My phone had become a weapon of mass distraction, buzzing incessantly with a mixture of outrage, concern, and morbid curiosity. The first call from Minho came at 3 a.m. His voice was a broken, staticky mess on the voicemail. "Sora, my God, what have you done? I can explain." Mina was hysterical. "The doctor said it could be a tumor. I had to be there. How could you do this to me, to us?" I deleted it. The next 99 calls and messages met the same fate. His pleas, his explanations, his declarations of love, they were all just noise. The weak, pathetic sounds of a man who had made his choice and couldn't handle the consequences. Joon-Ho and I settled into a cold, corporate coexistence. Our marriage was run with the efficiency of a hostile takeover. We had shared Google calendars, color-coded for joint appearances. We slept in separate wings of the penthouse, connected by a long, cold corridor that felt like a demilitarized. Our first public appearance as a couple was at a charity gala for the Seoul Arts Center. Joon-Ho's stylist had dressed me in a sheath of liquid silver, a far cry from the soft, romantic dresses Minho had always chosen for me. "You are not a flower anymore," Joon-Ho had stated, his eyes critically assessing me. "You are a blade, look like one." And we were a blade. We moved through the crowd, a united front of calculated power. His hand was always on the small of my back, a possessive, guiding pressure. And then we saw them. Minho and Mina huddled near the champagne fountain. Mina was clinging to his arm, her face pale, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the room. When they landed on us, they widened with a mixture of shock and venom. Joon-Ho didn't miss a beat. He guided me straight toward them. "Ah, Park Minho SSI," Joon-Ho said, his voice a silken dagger. "What a surprise. I hope your friend is feeling better." He let the word friend hang in the air, laced with implication. It must be so difficult dealing with such unpredictable health. I looked directly at Mina, a cool, polite smile on my lips. "Yes, Mina SSI, you look much better than I expected. It's almost a miracle." The subtext was a nuclear bomb. "We know you're faking." Minho looked like he'd been gut-punched. He stammered, "Sora, please, can we just talk?" "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice crystalline and final. "You made your choice, I made mine." And with Joon-Ho at my side, I turned away, leaving them in the wreckage of their own making. But a strange alchemy began to occur in the coldness of our arrangement. I noticed things. Joon-Ho, the titan of industry, was a workaholic who existed on black coffee and takeout. He had a tell. He'd rub his temple when a deal was going south. I started leaving a thermos of homemade doenjang jjigae, soybean paste stew, in his study on late nights. He never thanked me, but the thermos was always empty the next morning. He, in turn, began to see past my vengeful bride persona. He started taking me to his high-stakes business meetings, not as arm candy, but asking for my opinion on marketing angles and client management. "Your intuition is sharper than my entire analytics team," he remarked one night after we'd landed a major account, a note of genuine respect in his voice. He also saw Mina's manipulations with a clarity my love-blinded eyes had missed. "Her relapses always seem to coincide with our public appearances or your family's positive press," he noted dryly, looking over a social media feed. "It's almost as if her illness is scheduled." The revenge that had once burned with a white-hot flame began to cool into embers. The one-year contract, once a countdown to freedom, now felt like a ticking clock on something I couldn't name. I was falling for my contract husband. The terrifying part? I'd sometimes catch him looking at me across the dinner table, and the cold calculation in his eyes would be gone, replaced by a quiet, contemplative warmth that made my heart stutter. The climax was set for the annual Korea Business Summit. It was the social event of the season, where legacy and new money collided. Minyo's father was to be honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, their family's last chance to project an image of stability and strength. Joon-Ho and I were the guests of honor, the living, breathing embodiment of their humiliation. Backstage, amidst the chaos of reporters and flustered aides, Mina cornered me near the floral arrangements. The fragile facade was gone, stripped away by jealousy and rage. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You're just a business transaction, a temporary solution. He'll discard you the moment your contract is up. You're nothing." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and felt a surge of pity. "And you, Mina, what are you? The woman who had to fake a brain tumor to keep a man? You didn't want him until you saw him happy with me. That's not love. That's sickness." Her face contorted. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I fired back, my voice calm but cutting. "The scans from Seoul National University Hospital came back clean, didn't they? All of them. It's amazing how your symptoms disappear the moment you have his undivided attention." The color drained from her face. She hadn't known I'd had her investigated. In that moment of her stunned silence, Minho walked around the corner. He had heard everything. The look on his face, the dawning horror, the realization of how completely he'd been played, was the final, satisfying click of the lock on my past. But as I stood there, watching his world finally and utterly collapse, I felt nothing. No schadenfreude, no triumph, just a profound, weary sadness. The revenge was complete, and it was utterly, devastatingly empty. I turned to leave and found Joon-Ho blocking my path. He had heard the entire exchange. His expression was unreadable. "The contract is up in 3 weeks," he stated, his voice even. "I know," I whispered, my throat tight. The thought of leaving this cold, complicated man was suddenly unbearable. "I have a proposition," he said, stepping closer into my space. The noise of the gala faded away. "A new contract." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are the terms?" "The terms are indefinite," he said, his voice dropping, losing its corporate edge. He reached into the inner pocket of his impeccably tailored tuxedo and pulled out a small, black velvet box. He didn't get down on one knee. That wasn't his style. He simply opened it. Inside wasn't a diamond, but a ring of flawless, dark green Korean jade set in twisted platinum. It was unique, powerful, and utterly me. "I don't want a business partner anymore, Sarah," he said, his gaze intense, locking with mine. "I want a wife. The brilliant, fearless woman who had the audacity to look into the abyss of her own humiliation and see an opportunity. The woman who isn't afraid to leave me donjang jiggy or challenge me in a boardroom. I think I started falling for you the moment you walked down that aisle, not as a victim, but as a queen claiming her throne." Tears, hot and unreserved, filled my eyes. This was the real victory, not the ruin of my past, but the breathtaking promise of a future. Sora Vio, warm, powerful, and content. On my wedding day, I thought I had lost everything, but I was wrong. I lost a man who saw me as an option, and I gained a man who saw me as his equal, his partner, and the greatest strategic acquisition of his life. My revenge wasn't in destroying Minho. It was in building a life so magnificent with Joon-Ho that the past lost all its power. I didn't just marry a CEO for revenge. I married him for love, and in the process, we didn't just merge assets, we built a dynasty.